I was watching a video, or not video, I was looking at an Instagram post from Chris Williams, the guy who has that podcast. It's like the Diary of a CEO podcast, but it's like not that guy's podcast. It's good, but he's talking about how he's reflecting on how he has to shift from just being someone who works his face off like a nonsense maniac to someone who actually like makes good decisions. And no, nothing on him personally, but this is something I've seen played out a lot in the culture, where I think it's a byproduct of fiat currency, honestly. I think that fiat currency makes scenarios where it basically recreates palatial economics, because in a palatial economy you have to, like, people, so let's say like you own houses in fiat currency based system. It's literally, or really it's like banking. It's like I'll explain how bad it is. So I think due to the mortgage system and the housing system, so housing in terms of like a percentage of the economy is like 40% of the economy, roughly. And 40% of the money spent on housing just goes to the banks as interest. So roughly 15% of like the total GDP of the United States just off the bat is just going to banks as interest. Like how much of, it's really crazy how much everything is just owned by the banks due to fiat currency. And like the banks still occupy a favored position in a gold standard economy because the banks are still necessary. Like you still need banks to provide people, basically like you need people who are assessing the value of risks and the value of investments and stuff. Like this is actually very valuable, and this is a really useful thing in warfare, because like really it's actually kind of crazy how abstract warfare gets. Like let's say you and I are going to go to war and you sell corn, like you have like a corn based economy, and I have an industrial economy. Well, let's say I come in and I literally buy out. Like I go to all, like in your economy, unless you have some specific rules against trading with me, which now you're not going to benefit from global trade, I can come in and I can buy out all of your farmers and stuff. Like let's say I make more money than you, like I can or I know how to sell corn more effectively than you. I can come and buy out all your farmers and sell all the corn elsewhere. Now you don't have any food because I basically found a higher bidder for your food. And then you're like, how do I fight you? I don't have any food. But it's like if you don't have a deep understanding of like what things are worth, that is difficult. It's like Warren Buffett. Jordan Peterson talks about the role Warren Buffett plays in the economy, and how Warren Buffett basically spends all his time sitting at a desk deciding the value of investments. And Peterson's response to this was, well, I actually think this is fine because that's a very valuable service. We need people who are constantly assessing the value of investments, because it's actually, I mean, it's really tedious work. And I've come to realize this in terms of business. Like most of the value of business that I bring to the table is just like being really clear-headed and looking at a lot of data and making sound decisions consistently based off of incomprehensible amounts of data. And it's really like kind of tedious. And it's a little maniacal, and I have to like have, like there's a whole bunch of stuff that freaking crazy person, I Toyota Camry. And there's a ton of stuff I have to do in order to make that happen, but I actually have the ability to make that happen. So that's kind of how I provide value to the economy, is just analyzing this massive quantity of like data, really, and taking like what applies to me and then turning that into products and then figuring out how to communicate those products and like understanding. It's just, I don't know. I'm going to spend a lot of time trying to communicate what I've done mentally and physically to create the business that I've created, because it's really interesting, but it's a lot of work, and I want to try to understand it through these videos. So that's kind of like the whole point of these videos, to help me understand what's even going on. So, because ultimately I make the best videos when I'm trying to talk through something, and it's a whole bunch that goes into these videos. But back to palatial economics. So palatial economics, I think, is best understood through the Odyssey. So in the Odyssey, you have the palace run by the House of Odysseus, and the palace owns everything and then distributes out wealth to Eumaeus, to the swineherds. It's basically, you take everything that a household needs to live, like farming, cattle, leather production, clothing production, weapon production, all this stuff, all this vast stuff that goes into making a house, like a productive household. And you basically have this all owned by the household, and the household then ships off surplus for profit, which it then invests back into the household to compete with other households in the area for economic dominance. I mean, this is somewhat unstable in some ways, because it leads to, if you have hyper specialization, you can basically undercut the value of a good. And having larger economies, like Europe is like the Mediterranean is a much smaller economy than Europe and Eurasia. Europe is a less smaller economy than the United States. The United States, due to its landmass, is an inherently larger economy. So you really only have, Ford noticed this, you only have big business existing in the United States. Like really big business is the byproduct of the United States. Which is fascinating. And that's business as opposed to like trade routes, as opposed to other things that we talk about in other videos. But basically, palatial economics is very, very appealing because it keeps those in power in power. It's like, oh, you want anything that's owned by the palace, which is everything? Well, you have to pay. It's like that. Oh, it's like on the song. It's like 16 loads. 16 loads and a shovel in a day. What do you, and like, you said 16 tons, and what do you get? Another day older and deeper in debt. I told St. Peter, don't call for my soul. Cause I gone sold it to the mining store. Like, it just, it's a great song. It's 16 tons. It's just this guy like I was born on a day where the sun don't shine. I picked up my shovel and I head to the mine. I shoveled 60 tons of number 9 coal. I turned to the man and he said, bless my soul. Turned to my supervisor, he said, bless my soul. 16 tons, and what do you get? Another day older and deeper in debt. Said St. Peter, don't call my name. I sold my soul to the mine store. So like, he sold his soul to like it's basically like it's just getting in debt, because they own everything. Like, you're just getting in debt more and more and more. So it's just slavery with extra steps. And I really think the Rick and Morty episode where they're on like their Flugel boxes is a really good metaphor for the banking system, where it's like, because we have to exchange all of our money through the banking system, which involves these interest rates and stuff that are largely based on they're based on the the fractional reserve printing of money, and like the overall value of money, if you're saving money, is depreciating. So because of inflation, so you're ultimately, the whole point of money is that you can put your work into it and it doesn't go anywhere, but it does go somewhere. Like ribeye was $10 a pound 5 years ago, and now it's $20 a pound. Value of a dollar halved for me. Half. Like if I store my work in money, I'm just half in 5 years. So that means in another 5 years, like it didn't even work at all. I didn't even do anything. It's crazy. So basically, and then also I think the growth of government creates a lot of problems because you have too much regulation on where things can be built, how things can be built, and it ends up ultimately crimping people's flow in many ways. I mean, it's not terrible. Like, you can definitely work with it, but it's like, it's sort of weird the way they set it up. Like, if they wanted to go after anyone, they could basically go after anyone. Because it's like, well, you didn't something, and then something. Like, there's a lot of ambiguity. Like, dealing with the FDA regulations for making supplements, there's a lot of ambiguity, which is even how they end up saying that, like, they can put soy in things and say it's not soy because they've documented a process by which soy is no longer soy because of definitions. It's weird. I mean, it's lying, but it's weird. So, I mean, that ends up hurting me because, and everyone else, because they end up consuming magnesium stearate and cellulose and all this, like Bryce brand and all these industrial waste products that end up hurting their health, and they wonder why the supplements aren't working. But that's why I do what I do, why I make the supplements I make. But as far as palace economics, I mean, I wonder how hard it is to get into banking, because ultimately the only thing I see for it is getting into banking myself so that I'm not losing money to banks. Because it's like Ford talks about, like, if I'm giving money to banks, then, okay, like if I'm paying my employees are losing 40% of their money to banks, then I'm ultimately losing 40% of my money to banks because I'm paying my employees. And the goal is money in my employees' pocket, not money in the bank's pocket. So I think that strategically applied Fordism would be very helpful. I wonder what barriers there are to getting into banking. I know you need like $34 million or something, unless you're doing some sort of like for your own employee banking kind of system, or like, I think like Rich Dad Poor Dad talks about this. Like, if I own a house and then I sell you a house, but I loan you the money to buy the house, that's technically, I can technically do that. And I think that these sorts of things are, it's kind of slavery, but it's like, I don't really see what your options are, because you're in debt to someone, basically, in this new palatial economy. Like, I was talking to some guy at the gym, and he was going on, like, he was just ranting. He was like, I don't know how people are going to be able to afford anything. He's like, if I had to buy my house now, I couldn't do it. He's like, it's impossible for young people to have like childcare and all this stuff. And I'm like, yeah, I mean, what do you expect? The British came into Ireland and bought all the land and made it impossible for the Irish to buy food. And if they tried to steal any food, they just ship them off to Botany Bay to be slaves, or shoot them, or whip them to death. And it's like, what do you expect of this world? You expect that these broad economic forces are like looking out for you? They've only looked out for people in the United States thus far because it benefited them too. And that's ultimately why the United States has invested in literacy, And we have to invest in literacy, we have to invest in like education, but like personally, like not as a country, because it's a country that it just doesn't work. You can't publicly fund this stuff to a large degree. I mean, you can. It's kind of amazing that people can actually like read signs for the most part, though I am somewhat skeptical of that. I'm like, how many people can actually like read? Because how many people do read? Most people don't really read. I guess they could if you made them, but I wonder like what, I guess people maybe, I don't know, like really though, how many, I guess Facebook, this is where I think social media is really good, because I think social media actually helps people really develop more sophisticated literacy skills, because I'm kind of pessimistic about people's literacy skills overall. So I think that that's good overall. I think that improving people's literacy, improving people's ability to understand complex ideas via the written word is helpful. All of this is very, very useful, but the shortest distance between wealth and poverty is in education. So while everyone is getting fleeced due to inflation and fiat currency and fractional reserve banking and the education system, which largely I think sets you up for failure, because it sets you up to get a job, which is really not how you attain any degree of like even people who have good jobs, they're successful for other strategic reasons as well, which they didn't learn through school. So like I think school really cripples a lot of people in their mental development and their ability to actually progress in life. But I want to add this back to palatial economics though. So I think palatial economics is just the new norm. We need to have things organized at a household level now. I think that that's sort of what palatial economics is doing, is basically driving power back to the household, because it really is your ability to network that makes your net worth now, not anything else, because you're just a slave to people who actually own property, who own banks, who set interest rates. Because literally it's like, okay, I got my $70,000 a year job, my $80,000 a year, my $70,000 a year, okay, I'll be realistic, I have my $60,000 a year job that I worked my face off to get a 4-year degree to get, that I have to commute 40 minutes for, that I'm renting a $1,400 a year apartment, or $1,400 a month apartment, where ambulances drive by my house every night so I can't even sleep, and food's just doubled in price, so I'm eating peasant kibble and I have tumors growing everywhere in my body, and I can't think straight, my car doesn't really work, and I can't feel my feet. That's people. You're fucked. So you gotta find someone who's not in that situation and help them out and help them help you out, so that you can build something that's actually building value faster than inflation is killing value, which is about 50% every 5 years now. So, wow. Palatial economics, folks.